All right, circumference. That is an excellent one. Nathaniel, give me something else.
Weight.
Weight is an excellent one. And go ahead and add these to your list. If you don't have them on your list, go ahead and add them. We want to make as kind of a big of a list as we can here. But I'm going to change this so it's easier to fit everything in. All right, let's see. Garrett, what you got for me? Volume is a good one. Excellent. Okay, let's see. Kamal, what you got for me? Speed is a good one. So if we're going to drop these or throw them or something like that, yeah, speed would be good. What else we got? Okay, Hannah. Density is a good one. If you're not familiar with density, density is like how it's how the mass is distributed. So something with a high density, the mass is all concentrated together. Something with a low density, the mass is spread out more. Excellent. We're off to a run start. What else we got? Let's see. All right, Nathaniel, what else you got? Buoyancy. So buoyancy, if you're not familiar, that's how well something floats. Which is a topic we do in Physics 2. In Physics 2, we build boats out of cardboard, and we take them to the swimming pool and see whose boat floats the best. Hannah, what else you got? Bounciness. I like that one. I don't know how you spell that. It's close. That's no way how you spell it. But anyway, bounciness. How well something bounces. Any other big ones we want to add to this list? These were the big ones I was thinking of. Yeah, Talon?
Amount of air inside each ball.
Good. I'm going to call it air pressure, but you're exactly right. Yeah, that's a good one. Nice. Okay, so now we're going to break this into 3 categories. Independent variables, dependent variables, control variables. So independent variables are things that we change. Dependent variables are things that change because of us. And control variables are things that don't change, either because they can't or we choose not to change them. Control is the hardest one. So a good example of a control variable is using the same object. So every time you do your experiment, you use the exact same object. Every time. That's an example. Okay? All right. So let's figure out what we want to measure of these things. So let's figure out what thing we want to measure, or what we want to understand about it. So the most interesting ones on this list are going to be speed and, well, buoyancy is actually pretty interesting. Speed, buoyancy, and bounciness. Those are the most interesting from like a do an experiment thing. We could figure out circumference. The lab would be take a tape measure and wrap it around. Not the most exciting lab. So we're going to do bounciness. And the only reason we're doing that instead of the others is these other 2 are hard to measure. So we're going to pick bounciness because that's going to be a little bit easier. So our dependent variable, the thing we're going to measure, is bounciness. And if you're thinking to yourself, Mr. B, I have no idea how to measure bounciness, you're right. It's not a real thing. So we're going to measure bounce height. So what do we want to change? What do we want to change to figure out how it affects bounciness? Well, the easiest thing to change is going to be how high you drop it from. So if we drop it from a higher height, what happens to how high it bounces? And the other thing that's a good thing to figure out is if we change the object, how does that affect it? So what I want you to do is I want you to come up with 2 more controls. What are some things that we should not change? So what are some things that we should not change? There we go. So those are some of the control variables that we had. All right, next thing is the purpose. So here's how you do a purpose statement for the lab. It's very easy. It's the same every time. You do it like this. The purpose of the lab is to determine, that's not how you spell that, the effect All right, that's how you start every single time you do a purpose. You start it like this. The purpose of the lab is to determine the effect. Every time, that's how you start it. Then, what you say is determine the effect the independent variables have on the dependent variable. So I'm going to write it like this. The effect drop height and ball type have on bounce height. Every time. The purpose of the lab is to determine the effect independent variables have on dependent variable. Every time. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to do after lunch. We'll do a short little activity thing in between while we're waiting for lunch. But let me kind of explain how we're going to do the lab.